As longtime fans and myself an owner of multiple Nissan Z cars, the reveal of the latest Z was bittersweet. Exciting because it was the continuation of a line dating back to the 240Z of 1969, but devastating when the news broke that the car would not be available in the UK. So I figured it was going to be a long time before I got to see one, let alone drive one. Fate, it seems, had something else in mind.
We've been looking all day for this road. It was worth the wait.
Oh, it's so good.
Five years ago, the Nissan Z Proto came onto the market and I was genuinely intrigued by it because when I first saw it and I lined it up with a 370Z, I could tell straight away from the wheelbase and a number of the other dimensions that under the skin, this was a 370Z. The question for me was, is it a 370Z with a facelift?
But this isn't any Z. This is the new Nissan Z NISMO, the top of the line, the best of what Nissan has to offer in the Z range. And this is a real honor and privilege to be able to drive this car because sadly, we don't get these in the UK.
Now, when I first saw the Nissan Z, I wasn't 100% sure about its styling, but of course I only ever got to see it in pictures and video. One of the things that I wasn't personally sure about was these lights, but there is a callback to the original 240Z in the design and styling in terms of how the shape of the lights and the DRLs were inspired by that original car.
This is where we strongly disagree. Obviously looks are a subjective thing, but I really love the headlights on this. And I want to remind you of something that you said to me when you first pre-ordered your 370Z in 2008 for 2009. You said the one thing you didn't like about it were the headlights. A year to 2 years later of owning that car, the headlights are one of your favorite aesthetic things on the car. So just give it some time, give it some time.
All right, I'll give it some time.
Now, the front bumper also takes a lot of inspiration from the 240Z. The standard Z, not the NISMO, has a very 240Z-esque bumper. With the NISMO, they took a lot of styling cues from the 240Z G-nose with the sweeping front curve design that they have on this bumper. It really does look like a 240Z, but in 2025.
Now, one of the things I particularly like about the NISMO is what they've done with the grille. I felt that on the original Z Proto designs, that the whole grille was very, very square, which was very much aligned with the original 240Z design, but I prefer the NISMO design because of this angle here. I think it makes it less square and more dynamic.
When it comes to the rear end of the car, you can see a lot from previous Z models, including the 300ZX with these tail lights. I kind of wish this car was called the 300ZX. The naming convention has always been the literage of the car. We've always had the 350Z 3.5 litre, 370Z 3.7 litre. We've now got a 3 litre twin turbo V6, just like the 300ZX. So I really wish that this had that name. A lot of people call it the 400Z because it produces around 400 horsepower. And obviously when it comes to names, people like that constant progression. So they wanted a number bigger than 370.
Obviously in Japan it's the Fair Lady Z, but in other markets just the Nissan Z. And why can't this just continue to evolve just like the 911 does? And it can have a version number for sure. And actually, speaking of version numbers, this is still the Z34, just like the 370Z, which I think tells us a lot about the underpinnings of this car being largely related. Now, one of the things that I don't like about this rear bumper is this area here, the exhaust. The exhaust tips are quite recessed into the bumper area here, and I would think that over time this may run the risk of having heat damage on the paint. I would prefer the exhaust tips just to come out so they are flush with this rear area here. And in fact, I had extensions put on my exhaust in order to get that slightly protruding look. And it's a shame because the design of the exhaust tips I think is pretty cool, and it would be nice to actually be able to see more of it. The 370Z NISMO was designed with a zero lift philosophy. Most cars, particularly with this shape, actually generate lift, and that is the last thing that you want, because the faster you go, the less connected to the road your tyres are going to be. With this car, they went for a positive downforce philosophy. The aero on the front and the rear of the car are designed specifically to add downforce. Now, one of the things about the roofline, whilst it's similar, and in fact this roof panel looks almost identical, apparently this actually sits 10mm lower than on the 370Z.
These wheels, these raised Nismo wheels that this car comes with, are absolutely epic. I love the way they sit, and the way that these tyres that they've put on them, the tyre profile, the way it sits, it gives a race car look. I love it.
Yeah, these are Dunlop Sportmax GT600s, and based on our experience so far, they're a pretty good tyre. I just want to say, these wheels were very, very clean when the car was handed over to us.
Definitely have some saucy brake pads in there, because when they're cold, they do squeak, which does make it sound like to others that we're a race car, and that's what I love.
But these discs are actually 15mm larger than the standard Nissan Z. And the chassis on this car has been updated in many ways as well. Damping, the cross braces, the anti-roll bars, everything has been updated, including the springs and dampers, which are much beefier compared to the standard Z.
Now, as with every Nissan Nismo product that has been done in the last few years, they have put in some nice Recaro sports seats. These hold you really, really nicely and are really, really comfortable. But they have one problem that 370Z always had. For taller people like us, especially me, because I'm all legs and my upper body's about this big, I have to have the seat all the way back. And what that means is the top of the headrest just rubs against the roof. The 370Z had the exact same problem. It makes this horrible noise while driving along. But these seats are really nice. And there are some other changes to the interior that are Nismo specific. One of them being these floor mats. Now, I know there's a joke about special editions getting special floor mats, but I actually really like these floor mats. The Nismo also has the red driver mode switch and start-stop button, which gives off real fighter jet vibes.
Now, some of the things in the interior really do give away how much of the 370Z sits underneath this car. It's got similar panels, these door handles, door vents. However, what has happened is the overall materials that are being used has a much more expensive feel. This leather or pleather feels really, really nice. And also the additional leather and stitching around the center vent design adds a more premium feel. But one of the significant upgrades, I think, on this particular car is actually achieving a really good driving position, which was one of the things that really let down the 370Z. It was almost impossible to get a really good comfortable driving position. The seat was just a little bit too high, and the steering wheel didn't quite go high enough, and you found that your knees were kind of a little bit in the way here, whereas now this seat actually drops down much lower. There's two adjustments for the seat height, one for the front and one for the rear, so you can get that perfect balance of being more reclined or more flat. I prefer having everything as low as possible because that gives you that perfect centerline view through the windscreen at the eye level for me personally. It also allows you to put the steering wheel up, and that allows me to get the perfect driving position, which, you know, when you can kind of rest your wrist on the top of the wheel here, this means that you've got that purchase on the wheel, that leverage. I also really like the intuitiveness of this particular drive selector. At first, I thought it was a bit weird. However, once I started using it, I realized how ergonomic it is. It's kind of like using an ergonomically designed mouse, but you just kind of slide it forwards or backwards depending on what modes you want. If you want to put it in reverse, there's a button on the side that you press and you push it up and that puts it into reverse, or you can push it down into drive and down again to put it into manual.
This armrest, it has a really cool feature. The 370Z has one cup holder here, just like this car, but they've decided to add a second cup holder. So you can just slide this armrest back to reveal an extra cup holder. And that doesn't limit your storage space, which I think is really cool. The only annoying thing, and it gets on my nerves all the time, is positioning wise, when you want to cruise, it is pretty much just at the right position, for me at least, sitting quite far back to rest my elbow on a softer part than here. But what happens is, this edge here goes right where the passenger's elbow goes. So it ends up just getting push back gradually over time and you go to rest your elbow and you end up falling into this cavity and it gets really annoying, keep having to adjust it. That is probably my one pet peeve, but there are lots of other things I like the iconic triple gauge pod on the dashboard. That is the same as the 240Z, the 370Z as well, except for on this car, instead of it being a clock to tell the time, it's now got a boost gauge and a turbo speed gauge, which is always cool things to see when you've got a turbocharged car like this. And I also really like the dashboard that comes up, this new digital display that this car has. It has a bunch of different designs that you can choose from, a bunch of different layouts, and you can also choose what is showing, whether that's a boost gauge on here or you've got a G-force meter. It's really cool, but it's also funny how you can have a digital boost gauge here and a physical boost gauge here. We normally keep it with the G meter. You only really need one thing telling you how much boost there is. Speaking of boost, that is one of the biggest changes on this car over the 370Z.
Now, the 370Z had a naturally aspirated 3.7 litre V6. This is a 3 litre twin turbo V6, a baby GT-R engine. It's the VR30 DETT. Now, the VR38 DETT is the GT-R R35 engine. This is the smaller capacity version of the same.
Now, the new Nissan Z comes with 400 horsepower, an increase of 50 or 60 horsepower, depending on what market the 370Z came in. But this new Nismo has even more power than that.
420 horsepower, plus around another 50 Newton meters of torque.
Now, enough talking about the car. I want us to get out and experience what this car is like to drive. But seeing as you have owned a Nissan Z for the last 20 years, 350 in 2005 up until 370Z in 2009, one of the first 4 in the UK, and now currently a 370Z NISMO, I think you should be the first one to take it out on the road.
I totally agree. A huge thank you to Nissan for providing this car and providing my son's first experience with a press car. But before we put a proper driver behind the wheel, let's see what I think. Right, at the moment I am actually in Sport Plus mode because this does come with a number of driving modes which the previous 370Z did not. Apart from the S mode, which was about auto blipping on the downshift on a manual gearbox. This of course is a 9-speed automatic, and honestly it's actually pretty good once you're on it. But we'll talk a little bit about what it's like when it's not so sporty in a minute. Now, the downside of this car is that it is a 2025 car, and, well, we all know what that means. No sound, which is a real shame because in this tunnel it should be making incredible noise, but instead we get
Just a lot of wind.
Yes. Normally that happens when you get older, but this is because of modern regulations and there really isn't anything Nissan can do about it. However, we have looked online and we found that you can do something about it.
Yeah, there are a few spicy exhaust systems out there for this car.
And people here are incredible. They are letting me past. This is the only other place I've experienced this is Scotland.
Yeah?
Where you've got that courtesy to say, look, you are clearly a faster car. I am going below the speed limit. You go past me.
The one thing you don't get in Scotland though, and I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but is all the marks on the road from the people doing mountain drifting.
Yeah, you can really see it. Oh, it's actually pretty it's kind of very naughty. It's very naughty. We do not condone it.
Absolutely not, no. Definitely not growing up watching Initial D and all of those things.
No.
I think regardless, even from the passenger side in this car, it feels so sorted, and I can just tell from this side that it's like you are very comfortable with everything that's going on.
I am very comfortable. This car just inspires confidence from day one. But I would like you to be the one to talk about that, and we'll come back to that in a minute because I want to talk about some of the boring stuff first. This gearbox. When you're on it, as long as you get the timing of the gear changes right, it's pretty fast, right?
It's very quick.
Very, very quick.
Quicker than you'd be able to shift in a manual.
Definitely. And for now, the only option you have with the Nismo is the 9-speed automatic. However, it has been recently announced that a manual will be available on the Nismo in the not too distant future due to considerable demand from the market. I mean,
Who'd have thought that people would have wanted a manual in the best driving Nissan Z? I mean, crazy idea. There are 3 driving modes: Standard, Sport and Sport Plus. Standard is a pretty lazy throttle. Sport gives you a slightly more responsive throttle, and Sport Plus is a much more responsive throttle, and on top of that gives you these much faster gear changes.
I think that I quite like actually in Sport Plus mode, it gives a real kick that you can feel from the passenger seat as well, which is very reminiscent of almost supercar DCT gearboxes, where it gives you that punch every shift. It's really cool from the passenger side, but one thing I've noticed, sometimes you'll be braking and I can see that you're holding the brake pedal in the exact same position and you'll downshift and suddenly the car just does a weird lurching thing forward, and it's very disconcerting sometimes because it's like the car's obviously not slowing down at the same rate that you're trying to make it do so.
Yeah, and that only happens in Sport Plus generally. It seems to be sort of trying to do some additional engine braking for you, but it doesn't seem to get that quite right unless you are properly on it. So Sport Plus really is best used when you are driving very hard.
That standard mode in the gearbox as well, when you leave it in automatic, it does let it just roll through the gears very quickly and you stay very low in the RPMs, which will obviously be great for fuel economy. However, in Sport Plus, it does then keep it in the revs a lot more, which is really nice. Also, another thing with this gearbox that I found that I really liked is in manual mode, a lot of cars auto shift for you regardless when you get to the top of the revs. This car will let you hit the rev limiter, other than in first gear. I'm assuming that's a safety or trying to protect the car, or you, not sure. It can let you hit the rev limiter, which I think is really nice because it gives you that sense of reward from driving the car. There's a lot that's been taken away in all these modern cars where you don't get that glory of getting the perfect shift at the right time, whereas this car gives it to you.
Speaking of the perfect shift, it does do something a bit strange. If you do get very close to the rev limit and then you try to shift gear, it kind of gets a little bit confused. Literally, all it takes is for you to just touch the rev limiter, then shift. Instead of just shifting up straight away, it gets confused and starts going "rrrr," and then it shifts. That means basically you've messed up. Now, of course, you would really like the car to sort that out, but it is rewarding if you know that if you mess it up, it doesn't work out so well, and now you have to be a better driver. You have to know when to shift gears at the right time in order to get the most out of the car. Now, when you are just cruising along, honestly, put it in drive, leave it in standard mode. It's a nice, smooth ride. Gear shifts are really gentle and smooth. You barely notice they're happening.
From a passenger side, you don't feel them happening at all.
Yeah.
And you got lots of creature comforts as well with adaptive cruise control that you didn't get in the 370. Putting it in standard mode, automatic, adaptive cruise. It is really the Z experience, but in 2025.
Flick it into sports and you notice a much sharper throttle response. And in auto, you also notice it holding the revs just a little bit higher. So if you just kind of got a little bit of a winding road, but you can't really go too fast on it, then this is a perfect place to be. But I think our happy place is definitely Sport Plus mode.
Now in Sport Plus as well, on decel and on downshifts, you get a little burble from the exhaust. Not sure how artificial that is, if it's just coming from inside the cabin, but it's nice. It feels like you're in something that's got a bit of sauce to it.
Now, technically speaking, you have driven a stock 370Z more recently than I have, and because of that, and the fact that you're a racing driver and a professional engineer in automotive who test drives actual cars for a living, you're better qualified to say whether this car does a better job on the road than the standard 370Z does.
So good. Those extra twin turbos with the extra amount of torque gives a huge impact on the acceleration feel, just the amount of readily available power that you've got there. Now the suspension on this car feels so very planted. Going into these corners, you don't feel too much body roll at all. It's really flat, and you've got a lot of confidence on your steering inputs as well. The one thing that I'd say about this car is it's very, very communicative and very, very linear, much more so than the 370s. This feels very flat on the front end, on the rear end. You go into these corners and it's just not having any trouble at all.
I also find that this is actually slightly more stable in the corners. The 370Z feels like it wants to rotate a little bit more readily, but not necessarily in a good way. This will rotate if you induce it, but only if you really, really want it to. This feels like a much more planted car, which is surprising because it actually has the same wheelbase as the 370Z.
I'm sure that they've made some changes to the traction control, because the traction control in this car is much, much more liberal. It gives the driver a lot more room to let a bit more slip. The standard 370 had a really, really snappy traction control system that was not very friendly as soon as it started to slip a bit.
But you know what, actually, the first year, the 2009, because I had a 2009 from new, one of the things I liked about that is that the traction control did allow you to play around a little bit. It did have a little bit of slip to it. It wasn't until I drove some later models that it seemed that the traction control system had changed, particularly on the Nismo version. It was a little bit more grabby. It would be like, oh, no, I'm sorry. Oh, I don't trust you. No, I'm grabbing all that power. I'm taking it away from you right now. Whereas this, it just allows you to get on with it.
And one thing that I really like about this car are the brakes. They are very responsive and very sharp. You get on them and they just stop the car really nicely. We've not been doing too much hard braking. Obviously we're on the road, not on the track, but they are very responsive.
When you're driving a little bit slowly and the brakes get a bit cold, there's a little bit of squeaking that happens. Through some testing, we found that the easiest way to resolve the squeaking is actually to do a hard brake, shall we say.
The steering is so direct and linear. Everything that you feel the car doing from the outside comes straight through the steering wheel, not just through the butt gyro like it does on a lot of cars. You have to react to what you're feeling elsewhere. You do get that direct connection to the road, which is amazing. This car, I do have to say, it does feel like a huge step up dynamically from the 370Z NISMO. In standard, guys. Of course, yours does come a bit closer to this, but I hate to say it, I think this one drives a bit better than yours.
Do you know what? I hate to say it, but I actually agree with you.
Now, normally we are obviously very biased towards our own cars, but this has blown my expectations out of the water. I really thought it was going to feel like the 370, a bit heavier, a bit more power. Boom, there you go, that's your car. But it's blown that all away. The way it goes into the corners, the way it comes out of the corners with that extra grunt, stopping into the corners, at every single point you have so much confidence in what this car's going to do, where it's going to be, how it's going to react, which I think is the biggest thing. You want to know that the car's going to tell you what it's going to do before and when it's going to do it. This car does that so perfectly.
Now, I got to drive the Nissan GT-R NISMO recently, and although I didn't get to drive it on this road, I did get to drive it on some pretty good roads. And I think that car would be faster on a track. But I think this is more fun on roads like this.
It has the performance to boot as well. It's not like you're in a car that's got great handling and driving dynamics, but it's underpowered, which is what you get with a lot of fun sports cars. This has both.
So while the GT-R might be the king of the track, this is the king of the tollgate.
Right, that was pretty intense. There is absolutely no way that this is just a 370Z with a facelift. This is a very, very much uprated car. This is a lot more expensive than the 370Z. Now, these cars retail in the USA for a little bit over $65,000 US. The improvements to this car over the previous 370Z NISMO are worth the money. I genuinely think this is an incredible driver's car.
Do you know what this reminds me of?
Go on.
The perfect combination of a 370Z and a GT-R. All the best things of both of those cars
Rolled into one.
And the driving dynamics, the handling, the fun factor. I think this is genuinely one of the best cars I've ever driven. Now, I feel like our thoughts on this car are slightly elevated by the fact that we're driving it in Japan on these crazy Japanese mountain roads. But even trying to take that to the side, just looking at the car itself, it was just an absolutely brilliant experience. If you want to get one of these in the UK, there is one for sale on Delivery Miles, exactly in this colour, NISMO, for 80,000 British pounds. If this car came to the UK, it's normally about the same in dollars as it is in pounds, so it'd probably be around 65,000 pounds, but 80,000, that is a lot of money for a car.
That's $100,000 give or take. And I think that might just be because it is so rare. It is the only one in the UK. And I wonder, is the car worth it?
But we both liked it so much, and especially him, and he's been looking into the options of getting one of these when the manual comes out.
And on that note, make sure you listen or watch the Radiator Arms podcast, where I'll be sharing a few more behind the scenes stories about what happened on this trip with this incredible car.
And also go over to Sports and Touring to check out our vlog. We've had the opportunity to live with this car for a week, so we're trying to tick off all of our JDM car lovers' dreams while we're here. Subscribe for that video to come out, and also like this video and subscribe to this channel. And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.